Shoot.
I don't know if you want me to bring it up now or later, but you told me to bring it up in class. The question I asked you on mine, which was what we can do with a degree for entry-level jobs.
Yeah.
When we get out.
I have two things I want to talk about tonight, and one of them is job search,
Okay.
and the other one is professional standards.
Okay.
So we'll do that. And then whatever else y'all want to talk about. Has anybody been doing any reading in the textbook? What are you reading about these days? Anything? Devorah, you're probably up on that, right?
Yeah, well, one of my questions is gonna be, for the final,
Mhm.
are we responsible for anything different in Caproni or just?
You're responsible for the study questions and the material assigned on the course schedule.
And that's it, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, no new chapters, I guess, is what I was asking.
Well, we cover the first, 3 chapters on the first test? And then there are
The
additional
first-
chapters that are covered on the second test.
I think then it was 4, 6.
Yeah, they're
and-
kind of, they skip a
Yeah,
few.
they skipped,
Yeah, but then there are a set of study questions to go with them.
yeah, okay.
And so that's your responsibility for Caproni.
Okay,
And then there's 2 more
Kinnicky.
test banks for the Kinnicky
Yeah.
text.
Yeah,
Yeah, good.
okay.
And that's it, very much like the first test.
And then the math, I have to admit, I'm math challenged, so how do I find help with that?
Okay, let me interject right here and get myself caught up on tape, and then we'll address that. Today is
Okay,
Wednesday, July the 10th.
correct.
This is Management 3025 at our every other Wednesday night meeting. And so we're going to cover a couple of topics, anything y'all want to bring up. The question right now is, on the final exam, and in fact, I believe I listed it as a demonstrated competency too, the use of the calculator and some financial calculations, and that competency then you will demonstrate on the exam. Now there are a set of videos that go with that, and there are a set of handouts that go with that. And I think if you start with those, with that calculator, I use the Texas Instruments Business Analyst 2,
Okay.
or the BA2 Pro, or whatever, but a BA2 TI type. Once you learn how to mash the buttons, it's pretty simple. But having said that, if you would like, 2 weeks from tonight when we come in, bring your calculators and we'll start marching through some of that to rehearse it,
Thank you.
okay? Because you will be using that calculator again when you take the finance class. And on the off chance Dr. Searcy ever lets me teach the managerial economics class, we'll use it there again as well. Yeah, I'm a real believer in knowing those basic financial calculations. Like how to do a loan payment, and, which mortgage would be better for me for my house, and should I take a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage? Well, that calculator really kind of hits you right between the eyes about, here's the difference. Okay? Any other issues on y'all's part? Okay. Let's start with job search. Let's start with, what can I do with this degree? My basic position is this. A manager is a force multiplier. You can take 5 people and you can make them this productive, or you can multiply that through good management. If you've got people who are motivated, exercising discretionary effort, who are therefore motivated to be creative, to find new processes, ways to improve your organization, you can take those same 5 people and you can double their production, or maybe even treble it. On the other hand, a poor manager can be a negative force multiplier. You can take the productivity potential of 5 people and get every bit of work out of 1 person. There was a movie many years ago called The Bridge Over the River Kwai. It was about a bunch of American and British prisoners of war being held by the Japanese. And the Japanese made them build this bridge over this river, timber bridge. And they knew that if they resisted the Japanese, they would be tortured. So they had to put in the appearance of working very hard. And they would get out there and in beautiful pictures, beautiful camera work. Guys swinging a pickmatic, a pickaxe, a pick with a point on it, and he'd slam it into the ground real hard, and he'd pull it out, and he'd slam it into the ground again real hard, and he'd hit the same place 5 and 6 times. He wasn't making any progress, but he looked like he was working like a bandit, Well, that's what, and you and I have probably known people who work that way. They either show up and just put in the time, or they give you an appearance of being real busy, and they're just blowing smoke. Well, a negative manager brings forth that kind of output. So believing sincerely that managers are force multipliers. There is never going to be a lack of demand for good managers out there. There is an abundance of poor managers out there. People who really don't understand themselves, which is why you have the Caproni book, which is very self-reflective, and who really don't take the time. Sometimes they're not even mentored or taught, and they never really learn anything other than what they got to do to get through the day. And they don't typically think more than a week or two down the road. Those people are your competition. And that makes life nice, because with that kind of competition, you haven't got a hell of a lot of competition. So, to me, the field of management across a wide variety of industries is very lucrative. The potential for jobs and employment, I think, is out there, despite everything you read today. Go to just about any company around, and they can identify for you, yeah, I got 3 or 4 people that I got them as managers, but I'm not real happy with them. So that's what the potential is out there. Now, the other side is, if I've got to hire somebody in a management position, the last thing in the world I want to do is to put an ad in the newspaper and see who comes in. Because I'm going to get, 3,000 really lousy resumes. It's amazing what people turn in for resumes. We could have a whole class just talking about the bad ones. And then as you have to sift through all that, sort through all that, filter them out. Then maybe you get down to 20 of them that you think might be okay. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to interview 20 people? Well, there's 20 hours of your life wasted. Okay? And then even if you find one you think is pretty good, you're going to wind up spending several $1,000s taking a chance. And it may be 6 months later, and you may be out of pocket $15,000 to $20,000 to $30,000 for your company, and then learn this person's a loser. So one of the screens we set, so we don't have to go through that process as bad, one of the screens or filters that we set is don't even apply for the job if you don't have a bachelor's degree. And that's where this degree gets you over that hurdle. So that's the first step. Yeah, a lot more doors will open with a bachelor's degree. I don't need to be telling you that. That's why you're here. Now, that said, what bachelor's degree is the best? And the answer is, it doesn't make a hell of a lot of difference. Well, what about where I went to school? Well, that may make some difference in your first job. It may. But when you get ready to go to your second job, what's the most important thing? How you did in your first job, okay? So I think this degree equips you with the ability to open those doors, to make those applications, and the rest of it's up to you in terms of how you sell yourself. It's a marketing job. If I were in your shoes, I would be asking myself, what do I really love to do? What general field of industry do I enjoy? I know you're big into, well, firearms, but related areas as well. You could probably, I know you could, and you've done it before, you work for the Fish and Game Commission, you could work in that industry, you can work in the firearms and related industries, etc. So there's a wide variety, if you were going out there looking for that kind of employment, of companies you could target. For the rest of us, what would you be interested in? You may recall the story of my friend John Spence. He was in love with fishing. He wanted to be in the marine industry in some regard. He could have gotten a job as a representative for, give me a good rum company.
Bacardi.
Malibu, Bacardi. Bacardi was the one he always talked about. He could have gotten a job with Bacardi, representing their rum, and gone to fishing tournaments for the rest of his life. Okay? And he not only would have enjoyed fishing, he'd have probably been an alcoholic, but he had a hell of a good time for as long as it ran. So what do you enjoy doing? How would you like, what would make, here's a question for you. What would you do if you won the Florida lottery tomorrow and you never had to work again for the rest of your life? That's a powerful question. Think on it just for a second. What would you do? Because now your whole life is your free time. What would you want to do that would make you wake up every morning in love with life and can't wait to go do it? I saw a hand. You've already thought about this?
Since I was 18 years old.
What's that?
So that was maybe 12 years ago. I always talk to my cousin, and that's a conversation we always have. And with the years, the answer has changed a little
Good.
bit.
I would expect it
And-
would.
Yes, and now that I'm 30 years old, I think I will continue to work, although I will probably work a little bit less hours,
Uh-huh.
so that I can invest some time into put a better plan and invest some money so that I can open my own company.
Well, you
But
just
I
won the
will
lottery.
continue.
You just
Continue
won the
to
lottery.
work.
You don't need to set some money aside. Just open your company. What would you do?
You got the
But
capital.
that's exactly
Exactly.
what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to have a company with different branches from the things that I like, the music, films, the
Good.
art studio.
Good. And
software
I've
and
read
all
what
that.
you've talked about on
Why
those
would
fields
I stop
before.
working? I love working.
There-
It's insane.
Well, it's not work when you love it,
Yes.
you know? And I'll tell you, quite frankly, that's the way I feel about teaching. To me, to come in and have a class, preferably with more than just 6 of you, nothing against y'all, but I love to get in a classroom with 20 or 30 people and go on whatever topic and get the people laughing and going back and forth and then watch the light come on, you know?
And yes, of course, the house and the cars.
Sure.
And,
But the question is, what is it would make you want to get up in the morning and go enjoy life? And if you think in those terms, and you may identify the things where your future could be, where you could make a living in that area. And this degree is broad enough that it'll take you in just about any direction you want to go, if you sell it right. And so I think the real key is in selling it right. Determining the direction you want to go is tough. And for some of us, we got to go do some things and do them wrong, or do things we didn't enjoy. I had some not necessarily fun experiences in the military before I found out that that's really not what I wanted to do for a career. I've had a few other jobs, and I can tell you a few other fields I don't want to be in. Sometimes we have to do it the slow way and learn. But at some point, find what it is you really enjoy. To me personally, being able to make a positive difference in people's lives is kind of important. And teaching in a college or a high school or whatever, to me, gives you that opportunity. I love coaching high school soccer when I did that, because you had kids that were at that point in their life when they were ready to make some pretty important decisions, and a bad decision could really cost them for a long time. So, okay, decide what you want to do. But once you've done that, then you've got to identify the companies that are in the industry. You've got to do the research on those companies. And I hate it when people say, well, go do research on the company. What the hell does that mean? What does that mean? If you're looking at a really large company and you're going to send them a resume, you're already playing the wrong game. Because why? We've talked about this before, right? The best jobs are not advertised.
It's who you know.
Yeah, well, it's who you know and what you can do for them. What you have done for them, what you can prove to them, what the value is that you can create. And if you're not busy today demonstrating that with the people in your network, here's how I'm doing, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm excelling in, you need to start broadcasting that. And you have to do it very gently, very carefully. I had a conversation with someone the other day who said, well, I'm not on Facebook. Well, my thought is, you ought to have a Facebook page. And it better be pristine. Ain't no pictures of drinking, ain't no pictures of doing stupid stuff. It's just you doing your volunteer work down at this area, or doing this, and you don't get on there and gab a lot, but it's so that when somebody says, well, it's a nice resume, oh, I see you listed your Facebook page as a reference too. Good, I'm gonna check. You ought to be willing to do that. And that Facebook page should show you as a fine, upstanding person with these backgrounds and these experiences, etc. LinkedIn is the same way. So right there, you've established a presence and you're building on an image. And now, every time you do something worthwhile, you update your LinkedIn profile, you update your Facebook page. In the meantime, if you've got people in your network, what you're looking for out there, ideally, is you're looking for 2 or 3 or 4. You can call them godfathers. You can call them mentors. You can call them members of your board of advisors. You're looking for people with a little more experience and a little more exposure that you can converse with informally once in a while without being a user, without being a parasite. You don't want to be living off of them, but you want to be able to periodically pick up the phone and say, can I take you to lunch? I'd like to talk about some things that are going on in my life. Somebody you trust, somebody that's experienced, and again, has the contacts, the exposure. And you sit down and just chat with them about the things you're doing. And if you had 3 or 4 people like that you took each one out once every couple of months, and in the meantime, whatever other people you're working with, whoever you're in contact with, maybe you chat with them on Facebook once in a while, maybe you run across a magazine article that says, wow, this is the same business Jim is in, he'd probably be interested in that. And so you fold it up with a personal note on it, and you drop it in the old-fashioned envelope, And you mail it to him and said, I was thinking about your business when I read this today, thought you might find it interesting. Bingo. You're keeping that communication working. So then, if you're doing that now, and you go through this program over the course of 2 or 3 years, by the time you finish this program, those last 6 months or even a year, you should be out there with that network talking about, I'm trying to decide where I want to work. I'm trying to decide this, that, and what you're doing is you're laying out the hints of, do you know anybody looking for somebody who's got my kind of talent? And when those doors open, that's a whole different ballgame than sending in a blind resume. Working that network, grooming that image, keeping those lines of communication open, you can go anywhere you want. You pass the first hurdle when you got that bachelor's degree because they can't filter you out. Now there are other doors that will remain closed. Come on in, we're talking about you. Hey Chris, come on in. There are doors clearly that are going to be closed to you with just a bachelor's degree. You can't go and teach in college levels. You can still teach at the high school, public school level. And for a lot of people that's very enjoyable. It may be that you're going to want to consider a master's degree, depending on what field you're in or what field you develop an interest in. That's why it's so important to keep your GPA up. You need to come out of this program with a 3.5 GPA for sure. That said, while this program's only been going for, this is only the third term, the Health Services Administration program's been going for about 4 years now. And I know 3 people personally who have earned master's degrees, who got into graduate school with this as a bachelor's. So those doors can be open too. A little comment on graduate school. Graduate schools in large institutions may have certain criteria by which you either can be admitted or can't. But a lot of graduate programs, if you've got any kind of a reasonable bachelor's degree, they'll bring you in there if they want. It's the same sales job. If you were taking this bachelor's degree and you said, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to get a master's degree in finance and to go into financial planning. Well, then we start asking, what kind of programs in graduate level of finance are out there? If we said, well, there's one up at the University of North Florida, what do we do next? Now, this is the research I'm talking about. Let's find out who's on the faculty in the finance department. Once you get those names, you start finding out what kind of work have they published? What is their field of research? What courses do they teach? Look them up on Rate My Professor. And then, out of the blue one day, you email one of them, or better yet, send them a real letter and say, I'm interested in the master's degree in finance program at the University of North Florida. I know you're a member of the faculty. I've discovered that you did research in these areas, that I find fascinating. I would like very much to be able to sit down and chat with you someday if you could spare me 30 minutes. You know how many letters like that I've gotten in 33 years of teaching as a faculty member? 0. The first time I got one of those letters, I'd be thinking, this is a whiz kid. This is somebody who not only has the education, but has the social graces, the sense of presence, the professionalism to come in and do this kind of stuff. So you can open doors, and we said before, there's not a hell of a lot of competition out there if you have the people skills and the organizational skills to follow through on that kind of stuff.